Alrighty, I call to order our March 15th Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee meeting. I am going to, in fashion as we always do here, dating back to the last couple of years I've been on this committee, just do a quick go around the room to introduce all the folks who are in here. And then we'll get right into business because I know we got a lot to get through, and we hopefully will. We have a current race with our policy committee to see who can finish meetings faster. So we will start with Phyllis.
Good morning, Michael Gusman, Assistant Treasurer.
Jennifer Wagner, Treasurer and Chief Financial Officer.
Dan Hoying, General Counsel.
Kevin Ashley, Director of Financial Reporting and Transparency.
Good morning, Ben Lindy, board member.
Brandon Craig, board member.
Good morning, Dr. Moffitt.
Katrina Riley, Chief of Human Resources and Talent.
Good morning, Joseph Porter, Accounting Operations Manager.
Good morning, Cody Hutchins, Contract Analyst.
Good morning, Adam Gepner, Director of Business Technology.
Good morning, Lauren Roberts, Chief Audit Executive.
Hi, I'm Teresa Culbertson, just a taxpayer, former parent of a Cincinnati Public School student, concerned citizen.
Okay.
My name is Bob Schaefer. I am a neighbor of Withrow High School. They're right behind me. I have a son who isn't enrolled there academically, but he was a member of the football team for the last 2 seasons. And I got a 4-year-old who we're looking at Hyde Park School in the future. Thank you.
All right. And then Rob, if you want to do your introduction and also give the as President Bolton would say, do so that folks know how to participate who are online.
Good morning, Rob Wilson, technician. If you'd like to speak today during the speaking of the public, please click the raise hand icon. We will ask your name and association to the district, and then we will invite you to speak during the speaking of the public session at the end. Thank you.
All righty. So since we have a really packed, at least in my feeling, a really packed agenda, I want to go ahead and get us started early. I know that we are going to be talking about the budget on Monday as a board, but I think it'd be just helpful if Treasurer, if you want to give just kind of a quick update as to where things sit.
So Monday night, we're going to be talking about some other options to close that budgetary gap. Today, the schools will receive their budgets, their staffing, and their non-personnel budget allocations for the general fund and for title. The team worked really hard last night to review until 6 o'clock to review the first draft of the staffing to see if there's any weirdo things that they needed to fix. And there's an appeal process. So if they feel they've been understaffed for whatever reason, their appeals are due back to us by March 22nd. And then their budgets are due back. Then we'll have retraining on Allaview, how to enter and read reports. We developed some beautiful new reports for them to use. And we'll have the training classes and then office hours for people to come in and get help with the budget and the grants team. And then we'll go from there with central office.
Yep.
Thanks for that update, Jen. I have a few questions. Thanks for getting the budgets to the schools. That is wonderful. Can you tell me what the normal timeline would be for distribution to the schools and then them to be able to appeal back? And the reason I'm asking that question is because typically speaking, LSDMCs get an opportunity to review those budgets, but with a few-day turnaround, that seems very limiting to them. So can you tell me what normally has happened in the past as far as when they're normally distributed and then the turnaround time for the schools to review and then get back to for an appeal?
So typically the budget process starts in October. With the extract of student projections. So we build the student projections off and we give that out by December 1st. There's an appeal process for that. And then before they leave for holiday break is when we send just their staffing out, the first draft for their staffing. So they have time to review it. And then in January is when they do the appeal process and we do the non-personnel budgets. So, you know, because everything got started a little bit later and with the decisions thank you. Trying to close the gap, making sure that we have all those decisions made before we start sending information out and then having to retract information. It's just a little bit further delayed and the whole process is compressed because June 30, it doesn't change because we're late, right? So everything's compressed.
I get it. I'm wondering about fairness to LSDMCs because again, our process and the policy states that they should be able to review that. I'm a little confused with how they can review that in all fairness and equitably with a limited compressed timeline. Now, I'm not saying that the timeline shouldn't be compressed. I'm saying that seems excessive. So one or 2 day turn, they're getting it today and then it's due back March 22nd.
Just the appeals on staffing alone,
Oh,
not
okay.
the whole budget. They got plenty of time. So by the 22nd, they have to appeal their staffing and determine their PAM allocations for us so that, you know, we just tell them you have a number and PAM stands for P, art, music, teacher, library, media specialist. Technology, thank you. It's not PAM anymore. Yes. So we allocate for every 7 load-bearing teachers, they get 1 body, and then they have to have a half of each of the fine arts, P, art, music. Then after that, they get to choose how they allocate that money, those people. So we just give them a number, then they have to tell us what subjects they're gonna do, so we can put it in the right position.
Do LSDMCs typically have a role in that, or that's not really their role?
That's typically the role of the ILT, the instructional leadership team. So the LSDMCs is typically the ILT plus community and parents and the civil service crew. Some schools make it broader, but the collective bargaining agreement says the ILT builds the budget, the LSDMC approves the budget.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
Sure, good questions.
Any other questions? All righty. Everyone should have a copy of the work plan. If you don't, I have extras here that I can pass around. Do you not have?
Does anyone need it over here? What about you need? She needs it.
With a few trees today.
Over here, any?
We're gonna bring the whole place on the farm. 50 years.
Alrighty, the work plan is substantially similar to what we had last time. The one major change is we talked about with regards to property, the sale, lease, purchase, that really we were talking about this in relation to how it affects the budget. So I added just a line to say we review the budget considerations related to the proposals for the sale, lease, or purchase. Everything else is substantially the exact same, other than the revised date on there. The other thing is I did add, because we are having the benefits audit today, update, I added that to our calendar so that is properly reflected. Are there any issues or any reasons why folks would feel we could not approve the work plan today, or any questions they had about the work plan? Yes.
I have no questions and no reason why we couldn't approve it tonight.
So I just have a question and you can direct me there. We had lobbyist information in here. Has that been removed, amended?
I added it to the section M. Where anything legislative related that would affect the budget could come before us. And in large part because we've not, since I've been on the Budget and Finance Committee, ever had lobbyists particularly come here outside of the review for like a levy or for something that would have a substantial budget effect. And so we also have our own separate process through our board meetings as well as the board updates. So, I mean, again, it still could come through as part of the board's legislative agenda to formulate comments, proposed items, including school funding, revenue availability. It's item M. Letter M.
I do see it. I just, what you just changed the wording of that? What did it say previously?
We had two separates. We had one that talked about the board would review everything related to legislative agenda. And then we also had a separate item that was the lobbyist. And what we talked about at the first meeting of this year was that the only reason we would have the lobbyists come into our finance committee was related to any legislation that would affect the budget.
Mhm.
So I just combined the two into one,
Okay.
to make sure that we still are living within that spirit, but we didn't necessarily have to call out who we would bring to the meeting. So we could bring lobbyists. We could also bring
Congressman, whatever.
yeah, state rep.
Gotcha. Got it.
If we want
Yeah.
Dunny to come up here to a finance, budget and finance committee meeting, I think we could make that
got
request of him.
I got you. Okay, so I have no objections.
I'd be
I like
happy
it.
to invite him to a meeting, see if he actually shows up. All right. Well, if there's no objections to approving the work plan, and again, this has been the case for budget, finance, and growth in the past. We have approved work plans, and then some of the logistics of the calendar dates and that stuff have to be amended as we go along because stuff happens. And so we use stuff because I'm not Mike. Won't use other words. So if all our board members are approved, I think we can take a vote on this. I think we can submit it up to, I guess, give it action item to submit it to the board. I know President Bolton has asked for all of our work plans to be submitted through. So I think we're all cool with approving it, we'll send it forward. The other item of old business is just, again, we're constantly working to improve and grow. And so just if there are any additional feedback items we want to give to the treasurer with regards to changes that they've made or changes that they're making to the treasurer's reports. I didn't know if any of the board members any committee members here have any additional recommendations or additional things that they wanted to highlight or. Yeah.
I have no additional concerns or anything else I'd like to highlight. Thank you.
I'm gonna start counting that.
No, I don't have anything additional. I think I need to just, honestly, full transparency, I haven't really looked at it recently, but I will review it if we and then provide some feedback for the next meeting. Thanks,
Please do,
Jen.
yeah, right, we're improving on it. We have a team that's working and improving on it. And then we're making, soliciting Adam's team to help us make it easier to do. Because
Okay.
it's a lot of work to put one together.
Gotcha. And well, I do have a question then. With us moving towards the new consent agenda for superintendent recommendations, treasurer's reports, is it going to be more aligned with what President Bolton was speaking about, that the changes that needed to be made for the consent agenda approvals? I know she mentioned that we would probably need to redo or reconfigure or something different for our consent agendas with regard to those two recommendations and reports. So is it what you're doing in kind of falling in line with that?
I believe so, but I don't remember hearing her say that, so I'm not really sure what she was getting at, but it just got to the point where we were trying to use extracts instead of having somebody hand type the treasurer's report. It just got very clunky and ugly.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to make it more professional and
Okay.
easy to read.
So I'll take a look at
Okay.
that.
And I know one of the things we did talk about last meeting, and I think it's something that is a good plan for us as we go forward with these, is that there are some items that could be put on the treasurer's report and like a monthly kind of timeline that allows more time for them to get accurate information, more time for folks to fill in the information correctly. And then there are other things that as we go along that need to be on there as we go meeting to meeting. And so I think just working with that helps also to, so we know maybe one finance or one treasurer's report will be a little bit larger than, others a month. Again, gives us that ability to really look through those things when they come through, as opposed to what typically does happen sometimes where you have one meeting, you have one thing on there, then they get more information into you all. So now we're updating or amending stuff that could have been. And again, it's also going to be changing the culture of the district, because I think that's the other part that we've been working on for the last few years, is really getting folks to insert stuff correctly on time so that stuff can fully be expended and be put in.
And kudos to the superintendent for helping me keep people on time, because you notice we haven't had any revisions.
And honestly, that's, when Doc and I joined the board, that was one of the first things that it's just been a culture, right? Every board meeting, you would get these things, and then like the day of, people would be like, "Oh, but I put it in wrong.
Right.
I got to make this change."
Right.
You know, I put in for $1 million. It's only $100. Like, you know.
Get a call from the legal counsel. Hey, Jen, can I have this?
So it's always good to be improving the efficiency and effectiveness of our district. And so, all right, well, cool. Let's keep it moving here. So we're gonna go to our monthly financial reports. And I believe that is back to you, Treasurer Wagner. And the
Yes, and I'm
great staff.
passing it over to the guy to my right, Michael. So, or Kevin. Kevin starts.
Wrong. All right, we'll skip to slide 4. So I'll try to go through these rather expeditiously.
Before you start.
Yeah.
So some of the feedback we got on some of the new slides is that they appeared to be redundant. And so we did go through those and we couldn't agree on which one was the redundant one. We all had different opinions. So we left them in. So if you have feedback on slides that feel unimportant to you, please let us know.
All right, so this first slide is a look at cash and investment balances for all of our funds, not just the general fund, all of our funds. And it gives you a breakdown of what's operating cash within US Bank versus Star Ohio investments versus long-term investments. And then the yellow is debt sinking funds. This compared to last month, the operating cash is a lot higher because we've received pretty significant tax advance monies from Hamilton County. So that piece of the pie actually grew this month. The grand total is 361 million at that point for all funds and investments. Next slide. So this was one that we kind of thought maybe might be redundant, but we wanted to leave it for now. This was just showing our US Bank general operating account. And one of the things I talked about last month is just showing you how the revenues fluctuate from month to month based primarily on property taxes. You know, we do have peaks and valleys there, and when our low points are related to that account. Next slide. Sorry,
You have a question?
Yeah, I was just saying, Kevin, on the one you said might be redundant. I haven't really liked that one.
Okay.
I think it's really clear, and I think it's you can just see the curve getting lower and lower and lower year over year. And
Yep.
so my request would be we
Okay.
keep it.
Great.
Subject to feedback letters.
Great. And that's kind of what we were thinking as well. So the next slide is cash balance for individual funds. In particular, the general fund is shown separately, again, much higher due to the property tax revenues coming in. The debt service fund is next. Then we kind of grouped it by internal service. Some of the bigger ones that have a cash balance, student dining services. One thing from last month, the state and federal grants is actually positive this month. So we have received most of the reimbursements at that point. I know they do new requests each month, so that's going to fluctuate from month to month.
So just for the public's edification, our state and federal grants, we spend the money out of our general fund. And then they ask for reimbursement in the next month. So that's always running, almost always running in a deficit until the end of the year.
All right, and then 2 slides ahead is just focusing on general fund. These are the same graphs that we've done in the past. We are highlighting because of the tax anticipation note, 75 million received in December. Obviously, we're going to repay that from the tax revenue that's going to be due the end of this month. So we're just kind of showing where we would have been without that, because that's a more meaningful comparison. But you can see it's up. Part of the reason it was lower last year was timing of tax advances. So we didn't get those till like March, and then we got the final settlement. So next slide. This one shows a 3-year history of the general fund cash balance. Again, kind of similar peaks and valleys. And you can see where we are right now, again, including the 75 million. Next slide. This is just a total revenue comparison from year to year. Again, the same thing I mentioned about the timing of advances. But as a percentage of the original budget, we've received 79% of our revenue at this point. Next slide just breaks it down a little bit by revenue source. You can see the dark blue is the tax category. The green is the state foundation. And you can see at this point, state foundation is up about 11 million at this point. And that should be pretty comparable to last year because we had 2 a month every month. That's a little more consistent. Next slide. This shows, again, just general fund, 3 years of history, revenue by month. So I'll go on to the next slide. This one is showing how revenue comes in during the year as it accumulates to the total. So last year's total was the 574 million. This year we're at 584 at this point, given the tax anticipation note included.
So the only revenues that we anticipate receiving for the rest of the year are the twice a month state foundation payments. Because the next property tax collection is until August of this next fiscal year.
What is the grant reimbursement come back in? What you mentioned that the only revenue that you receive, when does the grant reimbursement?
That's monthly.
Monthly.
And then, remember at the end of the year, we have to do advances and transfers.
Mhm.
So we do temporary transfer advances of the general fund because you can't end the year in a deficit in any grant. So the general fund has to advance money out to cover that until we get this reimbursement back in, and then it just reverses itself in July.
Okay, I got you. Thanks.
And we'll have some other categories like Medicaid reimbursement. I think we get a $9 million TIF payment from the city. So there'll be a few
And
little
CRA
things.
payments coming in.
Yeah.
But not any big, large, we're not anticipating $160 million like we did in January.
Correct. They just keep sending us money would be great.
Yeah.
We love that.
Say that out loud.
Again, that's why we need to have Dunny come to the meeting.
All right, next slide. So now flipping to expenditures, this is just a look at total expenditures for the general fund year to year, tracking, right at the same level as last year. You'll see in the budget, we did add the 75 plus interest repayment on TIF. So I wanted to show what the original was there. But the percentage, the 62%, is just a slightly higher percentage than last year at this point. Next slide. Just again, kind of a high level showing salaries and benefits being the dark blue. Everything else pretty much combined into the green. You can see salaries are up about 15 million at this point. That could have to do with 3 pay months. I know we have a 3 pay month this month. So sometimes that creates a difference. Next slide. We talked about this one last month too. Again, because of the 3 pay months, it's a little more, it fluctuates more depending on when those happen within the year. Otherwise, it's, fairly consistent. Next slide is just showing how that accumulated expenditure amount grows each month. Last year, we ended at about 611, I believe. So you can see how that's trending. Next slide is the unencumbered or uncommitted. So we take a look at this each month. The total working budget being 720 or 626. Again, ignoring the tax anticipation. I have to keep footnoting that because it's a little bit of a nuance this year. But you can see our actual expenditures 388. At this point, there's 39 million in encumbrances. What we did for salaries and benefits, we took the budget less what we've spent, less about 20 million in underspend that we've included there as a net. And then transfers, there's a little bit left in there, but basically the unallocated amount's about 25 million. So it's been budgeted, it's been appropriated, just hasn't been encumbered at this point, and it's not salary related. Compared to last year, it was at 5%. This year it's at 4.1. So it's a little bit lower this year than last. And then the next slide, do you want to talk about that, Mike?
Yeah, this is our statement of cash flow for the month. This guy we kind of mentioned getting the tax revenue in. Obviously, we had a positive cash month, which is awesome. So yeah, we had 167 million in revenues and 53 million in expenses over the month. A couple weird negatives, just because I know people see them and say something. One of them was just some cleanup. So we talked about cleaning up an entry last month. This was the last part of that. It's in the state share local property taxes. It's just a cleanup. The other one, the negative in supplies, is kind of interesting. This was actually an ITM expense that when we did the POs at the beginning of the year, we put it in general fund, later determined that could be an ESSER expense. And so because it was halfway through, we waited for the invoice to pay out and then to determine to clean it up. So it's about 700,000. That's why those two lines are negative. But overall positive cash this month because of the tax revenue.
Before we move to the next set aside, are there any questions on the stuff so far?
So I do have a question. Can we go back to slide 17? I just want to clarify. Actually, I'm sorry, go to 18, Rob, my apologies. You mentioned the unencumbered budgeted amount. That is not, first of all, it's general fund and it's not salaries. Is that what you said?
Correct.
It does not include salaries.
Yeah.
And so what's in that category?
So it's in all the purchase services, supplies and materials. It could even be other financing uses. So things that aren't categorized into those types of things.
So it's budgets that's allocated out to the schools and the departments. They just haven't spent it or encumbered it on a requisition yet. So they have budget money that they haven't committed to anything yet.
Right. I get it.
Okay.
I just want, you guys look nervous. I'm sorry. I just was wondering what would be included in that category and that would not be spent. And I understand we're March, the school year ends in a few
Yes,
months.
all non-personnel budgetary items.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Let's keep it moving then.
So the next couple slides are preschool and tuition assistance. So I'll talk about those real quick. You'll see the number of tuition assistance students receiving some level of tuition assistance was 1,047 for the month. 941 of those are full-time and 106 are half-time. You can see compared to last year was 991 total and the year before 868. Talk about that a little more on another slide. The next slide is kind of like a revenue expenditure statement for preschool. Again, you'll see we allocate some of the tax revenue from one of the levies to that. That's the 14 million year to date. So I don't think there's anything. Again, just to point out though, we're using the 3%, and I know we've talked about CPP using 10, and so for now this is showing the 3%. Next slide is a new slide. I should have put a new information tab up there, but just to show the number of students served benefiting from some level of tuition assistance year over year, and you can see it's grown each year. We're showing the points are each month, but where we're at now is 1,000 versus about 600 at this point 3 years ago.
So it's something to celebrate that many more children are having high quality preschool.
You know, one of the things we've talked about for the last, at least in the last 3 years that I've been on this committee, is just the impact that we are seeing with the growth of preschool, especially following COVID. We had a kind of a re-influx and then it's been growing ever since. And I think it's just something for us also still to pay attention to as we go through with the new master agreement that has been worked out, as to whether or not we will see still the expansion of it, Everton, fund
Continue expanding, right?
is maybe one of those areas we're gonna have to think about, especially as we speak to the levy renewal that we'll have to start the process for pretty soon. And so appreciate you. This is actually this slide particularly is a great way for us to see and a good way to us to show to the public how many students are being and how many young students are being benefited from these resources and how much these resources may need to expand based on that, right?
Great.
It's going.
All right, next section is state and federal grants for Mike.
All right, thank you, Rob. So this slide, if you've seen, this is kind of a summary, state and federal grants. We should be spending about 45% at this time of the year. We are right on, a little bit ahead. If you go to the next slide, Rob, you can see the kind of the stair step graph. The dark color is current year. So we are looking good compared to prior years, which is good, which is awesome. A lot of hard work going on there. Next slide, summary of all the titles. You can see kind of where we're at. We do have the carryovers to allocate, so that'll be the next thing. But even with the carryovers, we're trending pretty well. So that's looking good. Next slide, Rob, is the ESSER.
Just quick,
Go ahead, sorry.
quick, before we go forward, is the comparison of title spending, I know we've talked about this in the years past, is that title spending in a better footing than what we've seen in the past with how people have been spending their title dollars?
Yes.
Yeah, if you go back to that previous slide, the stair step one.
Yeah.
So you see the dark gray is this year, the blue is the year before, the green's the year before that. So you can see it's significantly better.
You know, last year we
Yeah.
were like 27%.
What do you attribute that to? We talked about this in budget last year, but
A lot of things. I think one thing was better strategy at the beginning of the year. So there were a lot of strategic positions that were funded at a title. And so that was really helpful because you know, salary spends every month, which is nice. And then the other thing is just education and planning. I think as we come out of school-wide pool and into the individual grants getting broken down, last year, there's a lot of people trying to learn on the fly. This year, you know, we've got more of a pattern, more of a rhythm. People are making, you know, people are looking at the money and making choices and just continue to follow up with the people owning the budgets to make sure they're spending, make sure they have a plan in place.
so I hear education, awareness,
Yeah.
and then you mentioned title, salaries or positions have been moved to title, and the regularity of salaried positions coming out of title has helped with balancing that.
Yeah, anytime you're looking at the budget, you know, your salaries spend monthly on
Right.
a regular basis.
Gotcha.
Versus, you know, some contracts are like that as well,
Sure.
but your everyday purchases are kind of here and there.
Got it.
So there's, the schools typically try to hold on to their budgets because they're always afraid of running out of money.
Sure.
But then there's this mad scramble to buy it at the end, you know, spend it at the end, and there's not always an easy way to do that.
Sure.
So using the data from the schools, their instructional data to help drive their decision making is being a big help.
So have we had an increase in salaried positions moving to title from last year to in comparison to the previous years?
Like this year was a lot of reading specialists, math specialists.
The
What else is in
school
title?
social workers of attendance, the
Yeah.
graduation counselors,
Counselors, the
ELL coordinators, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff that was really, really based on the school's needs, so.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
You're gonna see that tree Monday night, right? The Title I decision tree, yeah.
I'm looking forward.
All right, Rob, if you go 2 slides. All right, so this is the normal ESSER block. As you can see, every month our blocks get closer together,
The cliff is coming.
which is good for spending out. You know, the idea is those 2 blocks will combine into one at the end of the year. And then if you go to the next slide, Rob, this is the grid kind of breaking it down, so. So we are at 25.6 million. In ESSER remaining at the end of February. And if you go to the next slide, Rob, there's the pie chart. Which I think is a little better because it shows you the salaries that are already allocated for, so. So we are spending away with that. And then Next slide, please. So one thing we did want to bring up on the grants thing is the ODE on-site review. So that was March 5th through the 7th. They brought, I think, 13 people from the state down here to see what we're doing. We visited 22 schools. They talked to like 30 some folks in central office. I mean, they were everywhere. And yeah, so these are some of the quotes. I wrote most of these down in our exit interview. These are direct quotes, but they were very impressed with what we were doing. And like, you can just read these, you know, it's evident that your students are embraced by the district. I mean, as much as it was kind of a financial audit too, it was also a programmatic audit. And they were just really excited about the program. I mean, one of our folks got invited to speak at their conference, like right off the bat. So it was really nice. Yes.
When was the last time there was one of those audits?
2000, it was the winner of the 2017-18 school year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In fact, I put some slides together to do a kudos Monday night with a little bit more data to celebrate. It's, yeah, we were really excited.
Yeah, we missed all this in COVID. So last time they were supposed to be back was when everything was shut down for COVID, so they just did a desk review. So it's been a while.
I think the quotes, and again, for folks who don't always realize this, the work that is truly felt is when you have things like the buildings feel positive and calm, right? In an urban district, that's not always how things feel. Sometimes they can feel really chaotic, right? So that's super positive. We saw a lot of parents and community members in the schools.
That they were very impressed with that.
And I don't know that we speak enough about the roles that our parents play to help in a day-to-day education of our kids, but also our community members who we don't often also recognize in probably the amount that we should, and should encourage them to be even more involved. But that's great that they saw that, recognized it, and appreciated it in their review.
Thank you. So last piece for me, I just want to give a shout out to obviously our grants team and then all the folks they work with throughout the administration. No, it's a 3-day visit, but it's, you know, 3 to 4 weeks of prep. I mean, there was a survey we had to fill out ahead of time for data for them. I mean, that was a lot of work. Everyone really chipped in. It's really awesome to watch like this district come together for something big and just everyone just pulling in their expertise. And I sat through some of the interviews and people were just hitting home runs. It was awesome. Just about the work they were doing and being proud of it.
It's nice to do positives in budget, finance, and growth. Yes. Well, so I think, is there anything further for our monthly updates, monthly financial reports?
Yep.
KPIs.
So contract KPI progress report, just a little update on some things that are going on and some of the things we've been doing. If you want to go to the next slide, Mr. Rob. This is just an update right now of where we are with KPIs and the number of contracts we have going through. So you'll see we have, as the end of February, beginning of March, we had about 969 contracts, totaling about 235 million. And we've done a good job of collecting those missing KPIs over time. So right now we're only missing about 162, totaling only about $6 million. So, but those efforts are ongoing. There's a quality improvement team that's that I help out with that's gathering missing KPIs. So we'll be having more updates on those further coming. Next slide, Rob. And I think I heard this question at the town hall. The last one we had was the locally owned vendor percentages going on. So I just wanted to pull some data. This is actually from the CPS purchasing department. So I do want to make a note of that. And just a couple of the numbers we have going on here. Active number of vendors is 4,700 roughly. Locally owned vendors is a little over 2,000. So our locally owned vendors total up to almost 50% of our total active vendors right now. And then this is a year-over-year spending comparison of blue being the total vendor spending that we've had, and then orange being the locally owned vendor comparison. And I just want to make a note, the 2024 for the orange for the locally owned vendor is February year to date. So that number will change. Also, I want to make a note that the purchasing department is going through and vetting our locally owned vendors. So this number is subject to change as they get addresses updated or make sure they reconcile their data properly. So
just a quick point on this one too is, and I know this has historically been something that we've worked at as a district, is that we don't always have information that is probably at the time clear enough for us to be able to determine some of the things like locally owned or minority businesses and that type of deal. And so as we gather those things into the process, I think it's been a highlight of what's been done recently is that information is flowing at the beginning more and more than in afterwards, right? Whereas, you know, in the past, we would just kind of get the vendor in and then we'll figure out all the rest of the stuff. It's been a more upfront thing. I think the other thing that I just wanted to highlight on there is the percentage from last year of the actual dollar was more than 60%, even though our local vendors don't make up 60% of the total number of vendors. So it means our dollars that we're dedicating to locally owned businesses are even more so than the actual percentage of them that are providing certain services. And so that's a great aspect of the
The
work.
previous years are full year reports.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and I'm not the 2023 year, or
Yeah.
is the year that I was kind of highlighting there, because again, that's 2023 and 2022 are 60% more.
Yep. Thank you for that point. Next couple slides, Rob. So then we'll get on to our vendor performance review. Here, I just wanted to just spread some awareness and just what's going on with court mandated and IEP tuition payments. So these are payments that we are obligated to make for our special needs students in that department and Department of Student Services. So roughly right now we have 15 different contracts going. You can see there by the graph. It's kind of hard to see, but there's an N number there that represents the number of students served in that particular facility or program. And then it does a comparison of the average PPA, the average per pupil cost year to date. So using how much we've paid out year to date this year, and then basing that on the number of students served year to date. And then there's an estimated year-end payout of about 10 million with an average per pupil cost of almost 40,000. So like I said, those are projections based on what we're doing now. And these numbers will be updated over time.
So this is like non-discretionary spending for us. It's court ordered or it's in an IEP. And so as we were going through the budget, looking for areas that we can maybe shave down a budget, this one typically pops up because it's a pretty big, it's a $15 million budget every year. So this is what I had Cody looking at. We're in conjunction with the Department of Student Services team. Valerie Walker's awesome.
She's great.
And so we're just trying to educate that as we're making decisions about budget, there's some areas we can't touch. This is one of them. So.
Thank you, Jen. Next slide, Rob. So this is just a deeper dive into a comparison of the two different types of facilities or service centers that are used. So we have the education service centers and then the private facilities. And this just breaks down the slide before a little deeper and shows the comparison with the per pupil average and then the cost and the number of students served at each one of those facilities. So roughly 269 total students served. ESCs are about 31, private facilities 238. And then you can see there the number of vendors we use and the comparison of the average per pupil cost.
So to nail it home, we get about $3,000 per student from the state per year. And you can see some of these students with their high needs can go up to $100,000 a year in cost. And so we do get money from IDEA-B that supports students with disabilities. But this group of children can average about $40,000 a year. So just showing how difficult it is to use state funding to support the needs of our students.
So, or Cody, I'm sorry. one of the two. In looking at this, there's a huge disparity between Stepping Stones that services 5 students at a cost of a little over 100,000 versus the recreation. And that's just, I only picked that because it's so far off. 31 students at a cost less than 10. So is there any control over how much we are able to, like, do we have to use Stepping Stone, or is there an opportunity for another vendor to assume those responsibilities at a lower cost? And or what is the efficiency? Like, how are we measuring the efficiency of these particular court mandated agencies and the return on investment for CPS students?
That's a good question. And the next dig deeper to the conversation, Stepping Stones has a highly unique population, and I doubt there's a lot of vendors out there that take care of those needs.
Sure.
But it's something to look at. Superintendent, do you want to?
Yeah. Very good question. And what we're finding really across the city right now is there are fewer and fewer locations that are able to serve the most severe needs. So when we think about Stepping Stones, for example, it services a population of students that have the most severe needs. And there are vendors that do not serve that population. So in terms of thinking about we need additional seats right now for students across the district. So it's not as easy to move from one place to the other, and we don't control what they charge us for it.
Right.
So when we say like a Stepping Stones provides services for the most severe cases, do we get more money for those students, or it's still that particular rate?
So the student, there's weighting in the state formula by disability. So we do
Okay.
get a little bit more money. And then we get federal grant to support students with disabilities, but that grant doesn't grow every year. So
Correct.
as our population grows, the IDB is not allocated on a per pupil basis.
I gotcha.
It's more I think it's on a census basis.
It is. And to answer the other part of the question, which is what we've talked about through budget, we don't get enough money in to support the most severe needs of the students. So even though the formula is weighted, even though we do have IDEA B funds that offer support for the level of needs that we're seeing for students right now, we don't get enough money to cover it. So that's why as a district, we have to do the offset.
Yeah, so just to tackle onto that, over the last couple of years, we've added 10 to 11 per year new autism classrooms because our autism population is growing. The Children's Hospital is drawing, their services are so good, they're drawing more families with those needs to the city itself, which is drawing them to us because we serve them so well.
And the other unintended outcome for that is vacancies, because we also, the requirement for the classrooms are very small, and we do not have enough staff to then support the needs of the students in the classroom. So it's a back and forth kind of thing that we're working through in terms of how to support, because this year we're adding another 10 or 11 units, 11 units
Yeah.
this year. So,
Each class requires a teacher and 2 paraprofessionals.
well, they require one, but we
add 2.
Yes.
And I have one more question. Again, it could be the trifecta of you all answering it. If you could go back to slide 37. Just one question around the court mandated and IEP tuition payments. I just want to clarify, some of those students are not CPS students. Is that right? Or are all of these services, this 10 million that's been paid out, 15 million you mentioned before, is that all CPS students, or are we providing services for other students with disabilities in other schools?
If there are residents,
Our
it's our
activities.
financial responsibility to pay for it.
So yes is the answer to my question.
Well, so.
Or no? Meaning
It may
private
be a
school
mix
students.
of CPS and non-CPS. I don't know. Cody, do you know? We can look into that, but regardless of whether they're attending, well, it's still our financial response. Do you know? Okay, we'll look.
It's a combination.
Yeah,
It is a
thank you.
so to your question specifically, if a student needs a level of service and they're in a charter school and they live in our attendance area, we're required to provide that service.
So thank you, because that's what I was getting at for the
Right.
public's edification, is that we're not spending this money solely on CPS students. There could be some of this money attached to students who attend charters and or private schools that we don't educate, but we are required to service them with.
Just like if we have a child who's placed in foster care, but they're placed out of the district, it's still our financial responsibility to pay tuition for that child.
Okay.
So yes, it's our responsibility.
Yeah, so for a kid, and it's different too. So for a kid in a charter school, they have their own IEP responsibilities. They take that on. A kid in we still have child find responsibilities for kids in parochial, private, et cetera. So yeah.
Child find, what does that mean?
Child find means we have we have to identify the student as a student with a disability. So they could say, hey, student is struggling. Could you bring out somebody to evaluate the child and identify them as a student with a disability? Because then that would make them eligible for services with CPS.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted the public to understand.
Yeah.
This is not simply all CPS and Curtis. I mean, just been costs that are simply going to our students. We do have the responsibility
Right.
to, with regard to students with disabilities too. Thank you.
All righty.
And I think there was one more slide at the end, Mr. Rob. Yep, so just bringing some light to the next month's ROI topics that'll be brought up, utilities by building by student, and then nursing services by building by student served.
That's for next month. That's what's coming up.
Is that the cost per student, per building that we talked about before? Okay, great. Thank you.
That's it for me.
Thanks. And again, a new addition to our meetings is Cody with the KPIs there. And again, one little last point of highlighting though is this is why state formulas and funding matter, because again, if we're providing services that are well beyond what we are getting even allocated in theory, but even more so what's actually given to us, because the way the state formula works now doesn't allocate the full amounts to what we are going to need for that student. It's a percentage. We are definitely going to need more from resources to be able to care for these students. So, all right. Well, another of our regularly scheduled updates is our insurance updates. General Counsel.
Yes, thank you. It's been another exciting year in risk management and property casualty insurance. And this promises to be a very exciting morning as we roll out our 24-25 plan. Property casualty insurance is distinguished from our health insurance, life insurance, dental insurance, vision. All those benefits are handled as a part of our HR department and benefits department. This relates to property casualty. So this is protecting the district in the event of our property being damaged, fires, floods, storms, tornadoes, etc. that would damage our property. It also protects us in the event of liability. That's someone suing the district. We have property. The whole sort of process of managing risk in the district is to kind of identify what risks are out there and then to line up insurance products that will help us to mitigate those risks. So we have property liability. Those are our biggest two policies. We have an auto insurance policy because the district has a fleet of about 100 vehicles. And so we have to have auto insurance for those. We have crime fraud insurance. We have international insurance. We have kids on field trips right now that are international, and most of the time your general liability policy isn't going to cover an international claim. So God knows what the kids at Clark are doing in Andros Island this weekend, but if they do anything that would cause us liability, we have protection on that. We have international insurance. We have drone insurance so that the district has some drones. There's a drone club at Taft. And you know, if they should bring down a major airline or something like that with their drone, we have some drone. Hey, you have to think about this stuff. I'm telling you, this is very fun. We also have drones that the district owns for doing roof inspections and things like that. So you know, again, it's about a team kind of thinking about what risks we face as a district and then trying to find some products to mitigate those risks. The biggest two lines of insurance, and really the only ones I'm going to talk about this morning are our property and liability insurance. We had a property renewal as of December 1, 2024, and this was a major issue for the district because you may recall we had a pretty major property loss last year. We do not have many property losses. This was probably the first loss that hit our insurance policy in the last 10 years. This was the flood at Rothenberg. There was a pipe that burst and filled the basement. All the HVAC equipment was damaged. Much of the IT infrastructure was stored in the basement, needed to be replaced. I believe Chris isn't here, but I believe the overall loss was somewhere around 1.2 million, something like that. And so, yeah, that hit our insurance policy, which had a deductible of 250,000. So we pay the first 250,000, and then the insurer took care of the rest. That was CNA insurance. They were very good to work with. They had an adjuster out day of kind of thing. They got us checks pretty quickly. So they were good to work with, but as is often the case when you have a major loss, we were canceled as they're insured at the end of the year. We went out and quoted, we still use what was Nice Lukens is now Assured Partners. They're in Kenwood as a broker. So instead of doing like an RFP like we would for many other products, we do an RFP for our broker, and we consider other brokers, but then that broker is working for us to quote multiple insurance companies every year when we renew our products. So this year we went out and got quotes for our property insurance from 20 different companies. The best we could do as of December was about the same on premium, not a huge new expense on premium, but they wanted to increase our deductible from 250,000 to 2.5 million, which we felt we could not, that was too much for us. If we had a loss and needed, to sustain that kind of deductible. And so what we ended up doing is we convinced CNA to extend our policy for 3 months. We talked to other districts in the state, all of whom are having big time problems with property insurance. In fact, we heard that Liberty Mutual was the only company that was providing new quotes for school districts in the state. We went out to Liberty Mutual and got a quote which we felt we could live with. There is an increase to our deductible from 250,000 to 500,000. But that's actually consistent with a change we made to our liability policy about 5 years ago. And so accepting that, we were able to renew still with an increase, a significant increase, which I'll share in a second. But our property insurance was renewed. And now that'll be effective dates of February 1 each year. Our liability renewal, which we have just worked through and will actually be going through board on Monday, was also pretty stressful. The biggest difference here was we had an issue with our auto renewal. So as you know, the district has about 100 fleet car or vehicle fleet that we use for, like, our electricians have a truck, our carpenters, our HVAC folks, some of our security response folks have vehicles. Anyway, there's a fleet of about 100 vehicles within the district. We've had that for a long time, and our renewal has been consistent for the auto policy until this year. We purchased an additional 10 vans, which we're going to start using we have started using for student transportation. And so that changed the risk analysis a lot for the insurance companies that quoted our auto insurance. And they wanted to push our deductible way up as well. What we ended up doing is splitting out. Essentially, now we have two fleets. We've got our 100 fleet that we've had forever, and those will continue to be covered under a policy that has what we call first dollar coverage. This means if one of our drivers, bumps the driver in front of them and there's small damage, instead of us getting involved and having to arrange for a rental car for that other driver and whatever, we have first dollar coverage. Our insurer will be on the phone with them that day, make sure there's rental car coverage. It's a very good product that we've had for a long time, and I think cuts down any kind of liability in the auto field. So that policy will still apply, that first dollar coverage for that 100 fleet of vehicles that are non-student transportation. For our 10 student transportation vehicles and any vehicles we add to that fleet, we're essentially treating that like our general liability policy. So we do not have first dollar coverage, but we have our same regular liability policy applies. So there's a self-insured retention or deductible essentially of, I think that's 500,000. It's listed here as 250,000, but we have the first tier, and then Hudson Euclid has the second tier. We call this document sorry, Rob, it's the next slide. This is like our towers document, we call this. So the next tier from 250,000 to 5 million is Hudson Euclid. And then we have excess insurance beyond that from 5 million to 10 million. That's covered by Munich Re. It's a umbrella coverage essentially. So that's how we've separated out our auto. And then our general liability renews on the same term. So $500,000 deductible. Second tier would be if there's liability over that goes to Euclid Hudson up to $5 million. And then beyond $5 to $10 million, we've got Munich Re. So that's our liability towers and sort of tiers that we have for liability. Last slide is the significant cost increases that we've sustained over the last not even 10 years on insurance. So if you can see, property basically was modest increases of, essentially we were paying 360,000 or thereabout until just steep increases. And then we had this significant loss last year and took a very steep increase this year, about a $220,000 increase on premium plus worse terms. We're now, instead of having a $250,000 deductible, we have a $500,000 deductible. Our auto insurance has stayed relatively stable. However, again, our new student transport vehicles will now be covered, but just by our liability and excess policies. Again, that liability, it's gone almost 3 times, more than 3 times what it was again in 2016-17. You can see we took a significant loss. This related to when we settled out the Carson bullying claim in 2020. The following year, we were canceled by Genesis, and we went out to the marketplace, and the best we could do was almost double on our insurance price. So you can see how those losses, you hear like people say when I get in a car accident, like that this is going to really hit my insurance. It really, really hits your insurance. We'll continue to work to try to, again, mitigate our risks as much as possible. We are still working with Assured Partners, but we'll do an RFP for their brokerage services this summer. So see whether there's any other, anyone else in the marketplace that can compete with them. Glad to answer any questions about our insurance.
It's
Yeah.
time to change the employee coverage. What is that?
Yeah, on the auto. Yeah, on the auto, and this has gone back and forth. Various policies for our auto policy, we have had hired auto coverage, which is like rental car. You go out and rent a car. For the last probably 5 or 10 years, we've had coverage for that included within our auto policy. This auto owners policy that we have this year does not have that. And so our advice to employees when they're renting a car will be take the insurance. For the last 10 years, we've been saying decline the insurance. So,
Right.
yeah.
Any questions? No?
Dan, I think this was an interesting and exciting.
See, that's what I tell you. I delivered. Board member.
There's no irony or sarcasm. I just want to, my mental math or my public math is not that great, but this is like over a 200% increase or a 150% increase.
Yes.
Over a less than 10-year period.
With worse terms, I want to point out again. I mean,
That's bananas.
it's
That's
bananas.
just wild.
Yes.
Other school districts seeing this?
Very
All
similar.
over the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost an annual email that I get from the general counsels in Ohio saying, is this as bad for you as it is for us?
Any kind of legislative advocacy effort to try to do something like, I just say if it's hitting everybody and it's this bad, could you pass a state law or something, or a federal law to get some relief? Like, is there?
I don't know that it's going to be legislative. I think what we probably need to be talking about at some point is changing our risk assessment. So if you're paying, and we are right now, $800,000, okay, that's our cost, our premium. And all we're getting is, we get nothing for the first 5. There's a claim made, let's say we get nothing for the first 500,000. We're still responsible for that. And we're capped out at 10 million. And this is essentially all we're covered for is in between there. At some point you say, it's not worth the $800,000 every year. Let's put that in the bank or a pool or things like that. Build your own. And some businesses do that. The Cincinnati or entities do that. City of Cincinnati has been self-insuring for some time. And so we can think about that. There's also risk pools that we could think about. So going in with 5 other school districts and trying to do the same thing. It's things we need to explore.
I think it's a longer term thought.
Right.
We have so many more pressing questions that are larger than $500,000. Just the percent increase in such a short period of time is new information for me. And I really appreciate it.
It's huge. Yeah.
So you just touched on my questions because I was going to ask about self-insured and what does the city do? And then what do other districts do? Because we went to Capitol Conference for board members and administrators last year, and they talked about that. There was a session on that. And so I was wondering, what do other districts do? And so I'm glad that we're at least that you mentioned it. Also, they had something on Good Morning America where insurance is crazy for even regular people.
Mhm.
So I didn't even think about it with regard to school districts, but maybe that could be something that you all think about. What does it look like if we were to start putting some money away after this particular budget issue? If we could, and then when could we start to anticipate being able to do self-insurance or the collaborative model with other large districts? And I'm interested to see what Cleveland and Columbus and some of the other large urban districts are doing, and if they're willing to kind of jump into this too.
Very eager to explore it, and I'm glad that board members are open to it. I think sometimes board members hear self-insurance and you're the board and you start to get nervous about, not having insurance, but we have to start thinking about it. So
Well, when you put it like this, it makes sense because we've been paying all this money. You've gotten more than what we claimed, and now all of a sudden you drop us. So
That's right.
yeah, that's my motivation.
The challenge will be to resist budget cutting it in times of slimness.
Yeah, that's right.
We
Start that after I retire.
we as a district at some point did do some level of self-insuring, and I think, again, this gets into the question of what's the appropriate model based on what claims look like now, because at that time, someone drives into your building, it's a certain amount to fix, but the materials and all these other things have also increased so high that insurance companies recognize, and they do their own risk assessment and say, if you have an old building where a pipe bursts, it's going to be 3 times the amount that it should be, or 3 times the amount it used to be. They have their limits and that in too. And so that is definitely something to think about here. President Sellers, quickly, if you had a
Yeah,
add
real
on there.
quick. I do know that police, fire, metro access, they are all uninsured, and whoever is like in an accident with them, their insurance has to cover all of it, no matter who's liable. What do other districts do who own their bus fleets? Is this something that we're being hit because we don't own our fleets, or is there a way, do they have to pay? What do they pay on insurance for
Yeah,
their
no,
fleets?
Glad you teed me up. I don't know exactly what other districts do on their fleets. I know our companies, as a part of our contract, they have to provide the insurance and indemnify us. So if, God forbid, there was some kind of an accident, that they are responsible, and if we got sued, they would be responsible for defending and indemnifying us as well. But then they have to go buy insurance for that. And honestly, for the first time, and we're now having the insurance companies the transportation companies come to us and say, we need increases. We've always heard that we need increases, but it always has been because of labor costs, mainly labor costs, and now it's labor costs and insurance costs. So is that?
Well, that ours is because they're private fleets.
That's right.
But like, what happens with that bus company, the school district that was up in Central Ohio that was involved in that crash with the semi, or the one in Hebron, Kentucky? How does insurance cover that? Or because they're public vehicles, is it all public vehicles? And is that something that legislatively we could be included with public vehicles?
So they have to have their own insurance. So hopefully.
Who does?
That school district that was involved in that accident
Yeah.
buys if that's their bus, they're insuring it. We now have a few of our own vehicles that are transporting students, and we have to insure against that risk. We're not insuring for fender benders in those cases, like that, the damage to our own vehicle or the damage to another vehicle, but we are insured for a major
Liability,
loss.
yeah.
That's right.
So I want to
But-
keep us. I wanna
But
keep
what
us
I'm
moving, though.
saying, but what I'm saying is legislatively, to Ben Lindy's point, legislatively, these are public vehicles, and why aren't we included with the same legislation for police, fire, metro access, and all the other public vehicles?
I mean, again, I think those are also great points for us to certainly bring some of our legislatures
Just
through.
Let the record show that Julie and I agree. on something. It's hang on, it's March 15th, it's 11/11.
Yeah.
Hey, look,
Or-
good luck, man.
Julie and I agree.
Yeah.
But I think these hit on some great points.
Yeah. I would just like to add, I think that based on the conversation that we hear, we can go and do some deeper study around, especially thinking about Ohio 8, what's happening there and what are some other options. I do just want to punctuate what our treasurer shared is, as we do this and as we think about it, this is not an immediate fix. It's not something that we would be able to even think about over the next year or the 2 years. So we'd have to plan for that. And anytime we start talking about holding money to the side, it's always, we know where we are right now with that.
That
And
goes
so
away
anytime
quickly.
we start thinking about that, we really have to also consider how that's done and how we monitor that. So I think getting some additional information coming here with just some updates, we'd be able to do that.
And again, I think we also are talking about different types of insurance. And so recognizing that we have a small fleet of vehicles. So what we do within our vehicles, we're never going to get the same rate as someone who has, 50 vehicles that they're using throughout the district and that kind of deal. And so I think it is important for us to also be looking at options and looking at flexibility of those options and what can we do, recognizing also what we insure also matters, right? And so this is actually part of the great debate or great discussion we had with regard to even purchasing the vehicles in the first place, is that there are additional costs beyond just the vehicle that come with them. Well, thank you, Dan. Again, you did not disappoint us at all. It might be in the delivery also, but the substance is still great. We have our investments updates.
So yeah, this one will be pretty quick. There's 2 pages that Rob will have. Just to give you some context, in August of each year, there's a requirement that Red Tree, as our investment manager, if you invest in certain instruments called banker's acceptance or commercial paper, there's a reporting requirement for those. So the last couple Augusts, we've had to do that report. And so that was a good time to do an investment update. So what we were trying to do was a cadence of doing this like on a 6-month basis, just to kind of give you an update on that and also consistent with that reporting requirement. So the first page shows what our year-to-date interest is. Just to point out, there's fluctuations. There is a graph at the bottom just showing historically what the 5-year treasury yield has been. And of course, the timing of when those mature is going to affect how much of an interest we have, interest revenue we have at that time. Since we are on a cash basis, this is interest revenue on a cash basis. The next slide is just a high level bank reconciliation at the end of the year, just showing you, like 35% of our total cash is managed by Red Tree at that time. 15% of our cash is in sinking funds, et cetera. So again, this will fluctuate throughout the year. Percentages will fluctuate, but just to kind of give you some perspective at that point. And we'll do this again after the end of June.
At the end of this month, that 78 million that's in Stone, Ohio that's where we put thank you.
Yep.
The tax anticipation notes. So it's sitting there earning interest, but we have to pay it back by the end of the month.
Alrighty. Any questions on our investments? Seeing none, we'll keep it moving here. And we're welcoming back some wonderful folks to our committee to give us an update on the benefits audit.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us.
The mic.
Thank you. So just wanted to be able to walk everyone through kind of where we are in terms of the benefits audit. We realized that I don't think we had presented to this committee kind of our overview in terms of phase 1, our phases of where we think we are in terms of the audit. So just to try to give everybody a backstory of where we started and just catch everybody up to where we are. So here on this slide is our progress timeline that we presented back in September 2023. And this is what I would identify as our foundational phase 1 of the items that were captured from the benefits audit that we felt like we needed to start with first before we could move forward with anything else. And as you see here, there was 5 areas that we started to focus on that included dependent verification, the COBRA management, data validation, the internal process documentation, and hiring a benefits analyst. Those things had to be in place first so that we can begin to take a deeper dive into the other items that were very critical and that had received low marks and that that the audit team had identified as high risk. You can go to the next slide. So just want to quickly give you some updates on our phase 1 targeted areas, starting with the next slide, Rob, please. Starting with our dependent verification and audit, just to kind of give everyone that's in the room an understanding of what this is. This is where the department has the opportunity to conduct the periodic audits of dependent records and to ensure that ongoing compliance is in place for the dependent records. One of the key areas that was found during the audit that we had individuals that were covered that should not have been covered, or we did not have the adequate records to support individuals to verify that they needed the coverage. You can go to the next slide. So to give everyone our progress today on this particular area, since 2021, benefits has required that e-documents are submitted for our new employees, and that has been a great progress improvement. I want to quickly say in terms of celebrations in this particular area that we've been able to address the issue of the missing dependent Social Security numbers by cleaning up those records. So since we began the process, that has been an improvement area for us. That took place by being able to conduct what we feel is an internal dependent verification audit in-house first, to be able to gather those particular documents, and that took place during our open enrollment process. The next steps that we see are happening in that area would be to perform the dependent audit with our new company that's our third-party vendor that we'll talk about a little bit later, Benefit Focus, and that will take place once again during that open enrollment period. We feel that's the best time when people are looking at renewing their benefits for the year, and Benefit Focus will be partnering with us to ensure that moving forward, we are collecting the appropriate documents, and then also taking a look at where we have gaps and missing documents and doing a district-wide push to have those documents submitted. So the next area was COBRA. And just to give everyone a backstory of what our COBRA area is, we had found during the audit that there were mistakes that had been happening with COBRA, and that's where we are allowing former employees to receive benefits after they're no longer employed with us in the district, either 18 months or 36 months. And the invoicing, there was a problem there. Since I would say in October 23, we've initiated the utilization of our monthly Anthem and Delta Dental COBRA employee report. That's been allowing us in the department to clearly identify who is on COBRA, and we've done a manual process to review those particular individuals on COBRA, making sure that the billing has been sent out to the appropriate individuals. And our next steps with that, again, partnering with Benefit Focus, we'll be able to utilize Benefit Focus to review the report, cross-reference the report with us, issue the billing. However, we are still responsible as the district to receive those documents and receive the funding. The next is the data validation and reconciliation process. And that involves really just reviewing all the documents, all of the employees that we have in our system, making sure that those items for the employee is accurate, that the benefits that those individuals have selected are the ones that we're paying for. And it helps us to maintain the high level of our employee satisfaction. That's where we see the biggest complaints in the department or to the department is when individuals feel like they have coverage or thought that they had signed up for coverage, but there was no, they find out there's no coverage in place. So the data validation process is really critical. And I will kind of jump a little bit ahead. The data validation process is very critical, which it prompted us to look at having an individual that was dedicated to the work of reviewing the data validation process and hiring a data analyst whose primary work is to validate and review those reports before they're sent out to our vendors before payment is sent. On the next slide, you can see our progress to date in the particular areas with the vendors that we partner with. And our celebration, I'll highlight the last bullet, that we are providing detailed rosters to our vendors with each invoice. One of the challenges that we found during the audit that was discovered was that the initial challenge was that we were using unique identifiers that were not matching up with the social security numbers, which is what we had in our system, which was Business Plus, which was not matching over to what the unique identifiers were being requested from our vendors. So we've been able to partner with them, clean up that process so that we can verify that we have a match with the unique identifier and the actual employee information, so that we're making sure that that is matched before we send out any payments. Next is standard operating procedures. We can't do anything in the department or in the organization without having clear standard operating procedures that clearly outline the process and how things are done with accuracy and efficiency. And that is also one of the main goals and items that our data analyst has been working on. So he has been hired, and we'll highlight that in the next slide. But that was one of the primary things for that individual to do, is to come in, take a look at the benefits audit that has been done previously and the one before that, and taking and creating these standard operating procedures for these foundational pieces that we just discussed. So in addition to the standard operating procedures for benefits, they have been included with the overall standard operating procedures that have been written and in place for the entire department with HR and talent. And the next steps is to actually get that into a visualization from just the written format to then now into flowchart. So that will be happening in the upcoming months. I talked about this briefly. The benefits data analyst has been hired. We're excited that he has hit the ground running, working really well with the team. Started off with reviewing the data from the previous year's audits and the recent one that was done, meeting with individuals from the internal audit team, and then just really hitting the ground running of understanding and building the relationship with our vendors, and working with the current benefits team to identify particular gaps and started putting processes in place. So in terms of completion goal of the benefits data analyst, this is going to be ongoing because this person is critical to that particular team. Reporting, the reporting processes, building out the project map and the timelines has been critical, and that is that individual specific work. So the next wave of our COBRA, Delta Dental, and all of the reconciliation is part of that individual's work. So we're working really hard to get all of those pieces in place before we hit open enrollment for the upcoming school year. So that shifts us into what I would call our refined area of focus, or our phase 2. These were the areas that during the internal audit, we found as high risk that we did receive the lowest scores in. So you see the areas there, which was Anthem enrollment reconciliation, the ASHME care invoicing, Anthem's claim validation, home billing, AXA equitable invoice, and our roster validation, and MERP enrollment reconciliation. So we have here our progress to date, the things that we've already done. I've mentioned that we had to do the merger with the unique identifiers, making sure that that is matching up with the CPS employee information and our system so that we can send out accurate information. And that has been a tremendous help. We've consolidated the reporting, and that has been all due to the benefits department working closely with the benefits analyst, who's been a godsend to the team. Just making sure that we are building in the process of improvement, the process of refinement, and the process of validation along the way. And that is very key. And the same for the others, where we have the unique identifiers with our other vendors and cleaning up that process. So again, we are sending out the appropriate information for the appropriate people. There's an appendix, 2 sections that we want to highlight for you. Rob, if you're able to click on the benefits on that link there. While he's pulling that up, I believe that this group is receiving the dashboard updates from the internal audit, and that is where the team is able to update the progress along the way. So you're able to see a snapshot But behind the scenes, we have developed our project tracker, which is very detailed, which allows us to see month by month view and percentages of where we are of completion for all of the items of the internal audit. So we've started, like I said, with those 5 key areas that were our highest risk and our lowest marks that we received in the audit. So that is where we are now in the phase 2. And then we are moving along and highlighting, and the team meets regularly to update this report, and as well as reporting and submitting documents to the smart sheets that generates the dashboard that you see from the audit committee. Rob, if you can go to the next slide, the last one. And so there's been a lot of conversation about our third-party vendor benefits focus. I think when we first came to have a conversation and give updates to the audit committee, one of the things that we went out to do is RFP for a third-party vendor. We spoke to a lot of other districts. We found that there was a lot of items that we were managing in-house that other districts have a third-party vendor to support that work. One of the main reasons that we feel that third-party vendor partnership is important is does not negate and take away the work from the benefits department, which owns the work, but it does allow us to get a partner that is to help us be up to date with some of the changing processes that happen and policies that happen with benefits, because they're ever changing, and allowing that partner to help us to be better efficient in the processes with the technology that they're able to provide, the reporting that they're able to provide is kind of industry standard. So Benefits Focus is the company that we were able to select through the RFP process. And just want to highlight 3 things that we feel they're going to be able to do for us. And I've talked about it already, but just want to underscore some of these. One is going to be able to provide our employees with a new benefit platform. This is going to be helping our employees to be able to better choose and understand the benefits that are available to them. So it's going to help us to reduce any mistakes that individuals are having when selecting during open enrollment. They will provide us with a report and give us clearer just visibility of all of the benefits that they are able to have during open enrollment. Second, they will go ahead, Julia.
Can I just give an example of that? So sometimes if someone chooses a family plan and they don't put any dependents in, you can still choose a family plan. In the open enrollment platform that we'll use, if you choose a family plan, you have to put dependents in. Otherwise, it will say you've chosen the wrong plan. Very simple, but that's an error that a number of people make, and then we have to go back and manually correct that. So those kinds of things will make it easier for employees to make sure at the end of the day they've chosen the right plan for themselves as well. So we really are just trying to maximize efficiency and ensure that employees have a really good experience with open enrollment as well. So this will be a platform that's designed for open enrollment. In the past, we've been using Business Plus Employee Online, which is great, and it's been helpful for us. This is really designed for open enrollment, and I think people will have a greater satisfaction with their choices and their selection.
Thanks, Julia. Second, the program will also allow for us to review the proper documents for eligibility for open enrollment. I mentioned earlier that was an area that was highlighted for us during the audit, that we found that individuals had selected dependents and we didn't have documentation for those dependents to be eligible for benefits. Having this process, Benefit Focus will be able to review the documents manually to be able to flag for employees to say, hey, you're missing your marriage certificate for your spouse, or this is not the adequate type of document that we're needing to support that we're going to add a child on for benefits. And third, I mentioned COBRA. We will continue to do the billing for COBRA, but they will help us with sending out the automation for notices for any payment that is due for COBRA benefits for our employees that are no longer with us.
Alrighty. Thank you for presentation. Again, for the folks who are not regular viewers of the Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee, our benefits audit is something that we've really been working with, going all the way back to, and some of the audits definitely precedes me being on the board, but this has been something we've done in multiple audits, and the work they're doing now is to try and get us on path to getting correct information, but also getting these things to work better, more efficient, more effective, that actually will, at the end of the day, save us money. Because we're paying out things for stuff that is not actually what we should be paying for, or if we have folks that are on our rolls, shouldn't be on our rolls, we have folks that are in the wrong benefits plan, paying for the wrong benefits, that doesn't benefit anyone in our district, but it also doesn't make the process work better. And so I think that's one of the things we've asked them to come and do a quick presentation for us so that we can kind of see where they're at on that. Is there anything else you want to add?
One other thing I forgot to mention that Benefits Focus is able to do for us that we're really excited about is the one-to-one claim reconciliation. So for example, they will review every single claim that we receive for any services for our employees. I'll use the example of a knee replacement. Say a person is going to have a knee replacement, they are quoted for their bill that is going to cost about $20,000. What Benefits Focus will do is review the area prices in the average and give us, hey, we're thinking that this knee replacement should not be $20,000. We think it should be $12,000. And finding that difference and pushing those providers to make adjustments in their billing. And once that adjustment is successful, not only will CPS receive a portion of the difference, Benefits Focus will take the portion of the benefits, but we receive half of that difference in the findings.
Okay.
Julia, you wanted to add one more?
It's exactly what I was gonna ask.
Wow.
Because we did not include that in any of our cost savings because we haven't seen that yield yet. So they said a school district around our size could expect to see $1.2 million in the first year because it's things that are double billed, or I had labs done and they double, like that happens a lot. And we don't really have that service right now. I was not confident in saying, hey, this vendor will pay for itself, because I don't know, that's an estimate of what they can do, but I didn't feel good about saying, let's pocket the costs in front of getting that. But I think that we should see some savings, especially in FY 25 and 26 in those years, as we go whole hog. What usually happens is you get the biggest savings the first year, and then years following you get less because people become smarter to the fact that you are checking all those claims.
Absolutely. And again, I know both the treasurer and the superintendent love when people say we're going to save money as opposed to spending it. I wanted to make sure, because I know you have a time commitment there. Did you have any questions related to this? All right, hold on.
Question. This is a lot of work, so thank you for this. I'll try to be brief. Is there an added cost for the Benefit Focus, additional stuff, or is this, we've already paid for it, so there's nothing additional for the extra stuff that they're providing? I have two questions, so that's the first.
Okay, so there is a cost to Benefits Focus. We plugged that in at the beginning of the school year. Actually at the end of last school year when we were going through budget. But they have given us a reduction because we did not have the program in place for the full entire year. Julia, can you speak to the amount?
Okay. Yeah, so Benefit Focus does not charge any money until we go live. So we'll go live in July. We were thinking we might go July. Actually, that's a fiscal savings for FY 24 because we will not need, we thought we were going to have to go live or we thought we were going to be able to go live in May or June. It's pushed back a little bit to July. So we really won't spend any money on Benefit Focus until July. So, and then they charge, I think the contract was about $349,000 and they charge a month. They just do that monthly, and we do that once we go live. So we've spent no money with them yet.
So we've spent no money in this fiscal year. You said
Correct.
that you put it in the budget though.
Yes,
right?
in the budget for next year.
So, but it won't actuate until
After
fiscal year
July 1,
25, 20, 25.
Yeah, FY 25.
I got you.
Correct. Yes.
And then I like the background project manager that you all have, the database. It sounds great. My question is to the auditor or our internal auditor, and just so that the public knows, the internal auditor is one of the reports to the board directly. Does she have access to that, Mr. Roberts? Is that something that she's been able to align your auditor database that you've given a great presentation on, you and your team, so you can track this? Are you part of that as well?
This is the first time I'm seeing this information.
Okay. So that gives
We
me
can provide access if that's helpful. I know she does have a different tracking system that we actually update as well, but this is what we have to use in terms of turning that into a timeline for us.
Sure,
Yes,
sure.
is what you were able to see.
Sure. I was just wondering because this is an area of significant concern. I was just wondering, was she part of those conversations?
She was a part of the initial conversations when we hired the data analyst to help him get started in building out the calendar for us.
Okay.
But then we can definitely have ongoing if that's something that she wishes to
I
do.
just was wondering.
That actually, the work that Thomas is doing, our analyst is doing, was guided by early conversations. As soon as we hired him, the very first week he was hired, I was like, you have to meet with Lauren and her team because they're going to be able to give you the guiding information around why is your position even needed or used. And so they've really been, Lauren and her team have been remarkably helpful to Thomas in terms of helping him to say, these are the things that are the big ticket items, these are the high risk, these are the things that we should prioritize. And so in that respect, been working really closely. We've completed the smart sheet that we do for the audit committee. Happy to share the project plan, Lauren, because I think that's the day-to-day work. The project plan is really the day-to-day work. How do we get that work done so that in the audit sheet, we can respond appropriately to those goals that are and those outstanding objectives that are there from the audit. So that's really the daily work that yields those that information to go into that audit template.
Got it. Just was wondering if she's connected. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we will make.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And then Julie, really quick.
Really
because we have
quick.
to keep
Okay,
it
so
moving
the
here.
benefits data analysis, is this work different than what Mercer was doing? Or is this an overlay of the Mercer work when we still need Mercer? Because I've been on the benefits committee for 17 years. And the benefits, Mercer has been doing this work. And then with the third party benefits, with the benefits platform, I do know that there's been that enrollment through Business Plus has been very, very clunky. And I think this should help with some of that enrollment because people's stuff has been all over the place. But for the benefits focus, when we talked about having a third party doing this in the past, we were told that the insurance companies monitor this work, that we are vendors. And so because they don't have a benefit if we're paying more, because we're not paying them for claims and that they monitor those claims. So I don't know.
Okay. So the first, the benefit analyst work is different from what's happening with MERP. The benefits
Not Mercer.
Mercer, I apologize. So our benefits analyst is specifically designed to work in the benefits department to run reports, to work with our vendors. So what Mercer is doing is very different. Our benefits analyst is specifically just designed to be an additional individual on the team from the data standpoint to help with validation, to help with reporting, and to help with the relationship with our vendors so that our benefits team, the true benefits employees, can continue to do their outreach and all of the other individual things such as retirement and FMLA and all those other pieces. We did not have a person that was dedicated with the data background and the experience with reporting, building out reports, because that was also missing from our shop to be able to clearly see where we were having challenges and to start the validation pieces. So that's that person's primary role.
So are they going to be working with
We
Mercer?
need to, I want to move us along here though, because we got other things
Yeah.
on the agenda and I'm trying to beat policy at least 1 month. So it's going to be a challenge, but I'm really want to force it. I do think there's a lot more that can be done with this. And I do think we'll do a little bit more of this with audit committee because that's really more where this will kind of be regularly updated in. But I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity in our committee because it's something we talked about from a budgetary aspect. And again, like I said, I'd love to hear that it'll save us money because we're making hard decisions. It's really good for us to be able to do stuff correctly that keeps us in line.
May I just add right here, just really quickly, we don't know yet that it will save money. However, we are working to get to efficiencies.
Yes.
And what we identified, and Lauren is aware of this because we talked about it in terms of transition. This has been years in the making. The concerns that came up from benefits for HR was one of the first audits that was shared when we came. What we determined is that information that at that time, and I think everyone on this team is aware of this, but what had been being presented out to the audit committee as actions and updates for the benefits audit in actuality had not occurred. And so this is moving that work farther along so that we can get to efficiencies that we have not had in our district in the past. So I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that we acknowledge where it's coming from. We don't know if it's a cost savings, but we do know that it will get us to efficiencies that have been a challenge in the district for a period of time.
Absolutely. Again, the accountability aspects of it is really great. Quickly, Lauren.
Yeah, Mr. Craig, just a point of clarification. I think one of our goals from today was to establish a cadence for benefits to report back. Would you be able to share some insight for the Finance Committee's expectation if additional updates are needed since we've got that team here today?
I think one of the things with this is that I think part of this should report through the audit committee for any regular ongoing, but I do think, and that's something I think Lauren can work with folks on. I do think for our purposes, if we can establish at least some point in time where we can then go back and look to see so whether that's August or September, where we're now looking at past the point of where things will be implemented and actually put in place. I know one, again, the examples is benefit focus. It's not supposed to really be something we would be utilizing until July. So we may need, a month or two to start to see how that's working, whether or not it's been useful in that sense. And so, again, whether it's September or October, August, September, October, that range, I think is a good time to just bring back that update. Doesn't need to be the full of everything, but maybe the updates on what we've seen the improvement on. Because I think ultimately the goal for this discussion in this meeting is really because we know that this has been a problem in the past with our budget. And this is an opportunity for us to really make sure we're showing folks that we're being accountable and addressing those things, and that we are putting in place the things that'll make it work. To your point, being effective and efficient.
So would September work?
September would be great.
Okay, so that'll give us at least 2 months of data since we go live in July. That would give us July and August, and then we can give an update at the finance in September.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Are you taking, I was gonna suggest quarterly, but, and I was gonna ask the internal auditor, but we can talk about it next meeting since we were rushed. But I was expecting a little sooner, but, quarterly, a quarterly expectation would be helpful, particularly around this area, because it is of significant concern. But I'm happy to table it to the next meeting.
And I think what we really do want to make sure is that we're actually meeting when they have something to tell us. Because that's the other problem that we would have is if we can schedule stuff on a regular basis, and then if there's no update, they're coming in and saying no update. And so I don't want to put that on unreasonable expectations. And that's fine. Yeah. All right. So I want to move us on. Quality improvement team.
Process improvement efforts in the treasurer's office to be able to serve our clientele better. So for every dollar of efficiency that we save, we can put back into the classroom. We've had enough training and enough time to work to actually start seeing some really nice results. And so we're going to highlight a different team each month. We picked this one, and unfortunately, the leader of this project has been out sick all week. So Mike and Joseph are going to do that for us. But this will be a particular interest to Dr. Moffitt, as we've had conversations before about vendor complaints and not paying the bills on a timely basis. And so this will help explain why that's a challenge on occasion and what we've done to improve that process.
Thank you, Jen. So, interest of time, we'll try to do Joseph and I are going to tag team this. We'll try to be quick, but first slide, just to kind of set expectations. So as a district, our payment terms are net 30. So that kind of means in layman's terms, if a vendor gives us an invoice today, our goal is to pay that within 30 days. Anything that's over that 30 days, that's kind of the focus of this whole QF project, because all the invoices are over 30 days. Historically, we've had average of about $2 million any given time of invoices that meet that thing. It has been as high as 11 million before. Not in recent time, but we've been there. That's kind of the quantitative data that tells the story of the problem. The qualitative are the calls and emails from vendors. And I know, a lot of people in this room, not just our office, have gotten those and complaints from vendors not getting paid. Obviously, it's an issue for the vendors, also an issue for the district. So one of the things that Treasurer Wagner will say is, it's really hard for us to budget with so much outstanding invoices that haven't been paid. It's hard to really do a budget correctly when you don't know what's out there. Also, some vendors don't want to work with you if you have bad payment history. And then, they always say, it's easier to do it once and do it twice, right? So anything that's overdue, you start getting the follow-up calls, you have to stop and do with that and work backwards. So it makes extra work. So that's kind of the problem. I'm gonna turn it over to Joseph. Next slide, please.
This is just a slide for the team members for the QI project. Again, Tracy Moore is unfortunately out sick. She's the leader of the team. And I won't go through each name individually, but what we try to do with the stakeholders is get a diverse group. So not just solely the treasurer's office, because pretty much anyone that spends money in the district creates an invoice, which flows through AP. So we tried to, involve people from treasurer's office, individually from schools, from student dining services. And there's actually some additional members that aren't on here because too many people to fit on one page, but work extensively with the purchasing department as well. But like I said, the big goal with choosing 10 members was to just make sure it's diverse and try to make sure that everyone's voice is heard in the process. Go to the next slide.
All right, so this slide is what's called our key driver diagram. So this is actually part of the work we do with Children's Hospital. It's kind of a formal document. This is kind of our theory of improvement, right? So kind of if you look on the left-hand side, our SMART aim, that's a measurable thing we're trying to improve. So last time we did the aim, we were at about 488,000. We wanted to see a 10% increase by the end of April this year. So very specific, very measurable, right? The key drivers are kind of that middle column. Those are the things that need to be in place at a high level for us to be successful, right? So we need to have things received timely. We need to have things approved timely. We need to have the budget match the invoices. So the idea behind this is if all of those things, if all those boxes are true, then your process is working efficiently and you're doing things well. The third column are your interventions. So these are the things you try to improve the process. The arrows link back. So any intervention can impact one or more key drivers, but you want to keep that link. Anything that's colored in green means it's active right now. I actually think there's a few other things that probably should be colored in green, just looking at it. I think we're a little humble. This team, some other things they're doing. And then the ones in blue up there, that means the intervention's been adopted. So it's went through a process. We're not going to get deep into that today. We'll talk about that, but there's a process to take an intervention from we're trying it with one person to we're trying it with 10 people to now it's rolled out to the whole district.
Keep in mind, we process about 15,000 invoices a month, a year.
Oh, a month.
Good Lord.
That's about, yeah, it's quite a bit. All right, next slide, Rob.
This slide is the run charts. So basically looking at the data, the actuals. We're only looking at invoices that are 31 plus days late. Like Mike said, we're on a 30-day net term. So if it's not we have 30 days basically to pay the bill. So anything before that period, we're technically not late, we're on time. So a key thing, and Mike will get to this on his next chart, is we've made great strides, and you'll see that later on as well. We've made great strides as far as keeping the invoices paid in a timely manner. What you see here are the spikes that drive us up. So I won't go into too much detail, but like TNN are then and nows. So in this case, we could have a great month that say, 500,000 invoices that are outstanding that need to be paid. But, if a $2 million then and now is sitting out there, we technically can't pay a then and now until it goes through the process and eventually makes it to the board for board approval. So until that approval happens, it sits out there and ages. So there's always a push to, first of all, decrease the amount of then and nows. So we don't want then and nows. If we can avoid it, let's avoid then and nows altogether. But once a then and now, unfortunately, does go through, then, it has to go through the process before we can actually pay it. So unfortunately, then and now process is not something that happens, in a few days. Generally, it takes some time to work through the process. So those invoices may not be able to go through, in 1 month or so. And another big one is approval not complete. If it sits in someone's queue for a while to be approved, then AP can't pay it immediately. So going back to the KDD that Mike went over, that's where we push through different interventions to see what we can do to improve these areas of a challenge. And you can go to the next slide.
Actually, Joseph, you kind of buried the lead here. So just wanted to call it to cue back one, Rob. So just wanted to call attention to, where is it, since what is that, January? We've been below our goal. So in this one, the dashed line is our goal. And you can see we've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4. We got about 10 weeks in a row we've been below our goal. So we've hit her. So that's, don't want to leave this slide before we say that, because I think that's really awesome. Next slide.
Really
Yes,
quickly,
ma'am.
can you explain, I understand it, but I want it to be publicly stated, what a then and now is. You said that you don't want then and nows, although we look here, you know, there's like $2 million in then and nows on one particular month. What generates a then and now? And then why do we not want gen and nows? What's the process? What's the correct process? And then what generates a then and now?
You want to take that one, or if you want me?
We're all looking at each other.
I was just waiting, was giving him an opportunity. So then and now is a certificate the treasurer has to sign to say it occurs when somebody it obligates the district to spend money without the proper procurement authority. Pick up the vendor and say, I need 55 graduation gowns. They send us an invoice. We don't have a purchase order in place to put it forward. So I have to sign a certificate that says the money was there then when it was obligated, and it's there now when I'm paying the bill. I have authority to pay up to $3,000 without board approval, $3,000 and above. That invoice has to wait until I can get into a treasurer's report and have the board vote on whether I can pay that bill or not. But essentially, people inadvertently break our procurement policies and state law when they do that. Sometimes it's necessary because it's an emergency, right? So that's why that certificate's in place. But we need to do a better job of educating those that do that. They just don't know. And so we've created Finance 101 class that we require all administrators to go through. And we keep going into the next level of populations to do that.
Are there any consequences when people can repeatedly submit then and nows from their departments to prevent this from happening?
I've tried a variety of interventions in that respect. What we're doing now is we're creating this financial dashboard that tracks non-compliant financial behaviors, and we'll be using some of that data in terms of personal evaluation. But what we wanted to do is take a year to re-educate everybody, so everybody starts off at the front and understands that they're going to be held accountable through their evaluations, and then progressive discipline if necessary.
Keep us moving here. We got some wonderful guests who want to give some comments later on, so I want to keep us going.
All right, I'll skip the Pareto chart for now. Go to the next slide. And this is a 3-year history, which really demonstrates the improvement. So I think sometimes a run chart, you get so many dots, and there's always a lot of times some cyclical work in our work, just because the fiscal year ends and that sort of begins and that sort of stuff. But you can really see the gray line is current year, that we've stayed below the entire fiscal year historical. And so not only are we flattening out those spikes, but we're also driving down.
So it's important to understand that it takes 3 things to pay a bill. You have to have a fully executed purchase order. You have to have what's called a receiver. So if Withrow orders 10 computers, they have to go into the system, acknowledge that they actually received 10 computers. So we're not paying for 10 that we didn't receive. So it's the purchase order has to be in place, the invoice, the receiver has to be there, and then the invoice. That data has to match or we can't release a payment. So that chart that was before that, Mike, can you go back just one real quick? Those are the reasons why an invoice gets delayed. And the biggest reason why we can't pay a bill is because the receiver's not in place. And so that's what we're trying to re-educate people and do checklists and get on top of people. Because if we solve that problem, we're gonna have a significant area of improvement. So we really wanted to celebrate Tracy and our hard work, because she's worked really hard on this and she's made great strides. So we'll invite her to the next meeting so you can just say, hey.
Unfortunately, she's under the road.
Anything else?
We're good.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for giving us that update. And again, we'll keep doing these updates. Before we tack on to kind of what we're going to talk about next week, I wanted to open up for some hearing of the public. Do we have anybody online? Nope. All right. So I know we have a couple people in the room who wanted to share thoughts. So, again, with hearing of the public, we give 2 minutes to each speaker. If you just want to start by introducing yourself, and then we'll give you 2 minutes to share your thoughts.
My name is Bob Schaefer. I live at 3675 Kendall Avenue, right next to Withrow. I'm here today to convey to the board. I don't know if I came to the right committee. I know at one point Tennis Foundation presented here, but there are concerns in my neighborhood. There's 2 other neighbors here. There are others that I told, don't come down today. I don't want to make a big scene. I just want to get on the record that myself and my neighbors are deeply concerned about this proposed 28,000 square foot white metal building on the open fields behind Withrow. A little bit of history, I'm sure you're all aware of it. Those fields behind Withrow have been open fields for the 100+ year history of that institution. Obviously, to be transparent, I'm a neighbor. I have personal interests that affect me, and my other neighbors that are, right there next to the property. But I think there's great value in that open space, not just for us neighbors that live next to it, but for the broader community. Before Major League Baseball made a kind donation to redo the baseball fields, we used to have people play cricket out there every Saturday morning. And if you live there and you watch those fields, you see all kinds of people come in and use them for all kinds of different purposes. There's peewee football leagues that play out there. There's peewee cheerleading teams that drill out there. There's soccer, frisbee, a lot of stuff. I want everybody to know that Principal Gray at Withrow, I have great respect for him. I even respect some of the goals and aspirations of the Cincinnati Tennis Foundation in terms of, am I up? No.
Yeah, it's 2 minutes there.
Oh,
Thank you, though.
Well, I'm sorry. I think I lodged my concern. I'm happy to reach out and send you all stuff in writing. I have some photos here that of renditions. I'll just leave them with you.
All right.
I just wanted to get it on the record.
Okay, thank you. Is there other speakers? Okay, so again, start by introducing yourself, and then you have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. So my name is Matt Flynn. I'm a CPS parent. I have kids at 2 different CPS schools. I'm also a resident of Kendall Avenue. My back property is probably 50 feet from the Cincinnati Tennis Foundation gate where they do their programming. I'm a customer of the Tennis Foundation. My kid participates in their program. I'm a fan of what they do. So just to be clear, I'm not anti CTF. I'm definitely not anti Withrow. Definitely not anti CPS. So with that said, I come today just so when Principal Gray and Tennis Foundation come to present again, that they're going to present plans. I just ask that you challenge the concept. I'd like for some critical thinking and critical questions about what they're proposing to make sure that it's truly in the best interest of CPS, not just Withrow, all of CPS. CPS has got a ton of needs. Walnut's got a tennis court that's amazing, less than 2 miles from Withrow's campus. I just can't imagine that anybody in this room would sit here and say another tennis center is a priority for CPS at this moment. Principal Gray, as far as I can tell, has never sent his students to Walnut to participate in their programming. Let's start there before we build a multi-million-dollar facility. So I know you don't have anything formal. I just ask when it does come. They're going to present a 50-year lease on CPS property where CPS is responsible for operating costs, pay for a parking lot, This isn't insignificant. So again, put CPS first. CTF's programming is not geared towards CPS students. Again, put CPS first. Please challenge what you hear when they come. Thank you for the time.
All righty. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? No? All right. So final things we'll just kind of cover really quickly here is our next meeting, which has a much shorter agenda. So we will get out in a much faster time. I promise everybody here. I say that now and then we'll add like 14 things to it. But we're really just going to cover one of the things is unclaimed funds is going to be on next month's agenda, I believe. And then also our treasurer's goals, because this is part of the role of this committee is to establish the goals and discuss the goals with regards to the treasurer. So unless there's anything else. Yeah.
I would like to get an explanation of like the funds that are separate from title. So like Fund 19, Fund 17, Fund 18. I'd like to get a explanation on those funds, balances, descriptions, what they were intended for. That.
So we can do maybe just a general quick highlight of what the different funds are and what constitutes each of those. All righty. If there's nothing else for the good of the cause here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Just as a quick point with the goals part, what we want to do is as a committee, and I'll follow up with Ben after this because days ago. It's just submit ideas for some goals. We're going to have a discussion around the goals next session. May is when we will actually put together a more finalized list so that it would go before the larger board. But I think the point of next month is to bring some goals or submit some goals in, ideas for goals. Again, hopefully in alignment with stuff we've already been doing, but then also anything that needs to be highlighted also. Again, want to thank everybody, and I think also our guests who stood out this 2-hour meeting. You guys have dedication.
I'm impressed. I feel very good about what you all are doing. I thought this was
Awesome.
a very professional meeting, and I have confidence in what you're doing. So it was a real benefit for me.
Well, I'd like to hear that about us. Thanks.
Can we quote you?
Next meeting's agenda will have a